YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. Heading into NFL Week 2. First game of Week 2 is actually tonight. We got the New York Football Giants versus the Washington Football Team. We'll have you covered throughout the entire game, like every game, on our Twitter. And to get involved with videos like these where we have bold predictions sent in by you guys, got to go to our Twitter there. A lot of you sent in some bold predictions. Appreciate everyone. I kind of skimmed through and see which ones stand out to me that we can talk about. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to have a lot of fun with it like usual every Thursday. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on. We got weekly predictions, score predictions, power rankings, a lot more. We're adding more throughout the NFL season like usual as well. So join us. Check out that BetQL app. Patreon has best bets and score predictions for NFL and college football. Link down below for that and anything else that you need there. So, yeah, real quick, here's our Twitter. This is how you join the Picks League. It's on here. I'll put a link down below. Some updates on NFL news, and then there's that bold predictions post that I post every single Thursday, kind of early afternoon, before noon maybe. So, yeah, check it out. But the first one, Andrew Cambron. Someone gets fired. I thought that was a funny one. Week 2, after Week 2, somebody gets fired basically. I do think that is pretty piping. I don't think anyone gets fired based off Week 2. But I thought it was an interesting one here. I thought it was an interesting one because I was just trying to think who could possibly get fired. Who could possibly get fired? It would have to be a team starting 0-2. And I'm trying to think through these teams. I think most people would probably bring up Matt Nagy if the Bears lost to the Bengals 0-2. He didn't coach. It wasn't a well-coached game last week against the Rams. It was the Rams. I don't think Nagy would get fired. I think there's some sort of an agreement in there that they kind of see some of the Justin Fields project out. Himself and Ryan Pace kind of bought themselves some time there with that. Kind of smart, bringing Justin Fields, and it's not a full goal thing yet. Give us some time. So kind of smart. Only one I could think of really, maybe Mike Zimmer of the Vikings. If they lost again, and maybe, they would probably have to look pretty bad on defense at the same time if that's the case. Again, I think it's pretty piping for this to happen, but it's interesting. That was kind of the if I had to say who the most likely would be, it'd probably be Zimmer, actually. Not that I think he gets fired, but just because the circumstances. Maybe they get blown out by the Cardinals. They lost to the Bengals last week. The defense also doesn't look good. Maybe it's time to move on. I just don't see it, but that would be the most likely, like I said. So it's definitely an interesting one to think about. Again, I think people would probably bring up Nagy. Last year in this video, every week it was like Gase, Anthony Lynn, Gase. When are they going to get fired? So they usually hang on to their jobs longer than expected. Next up from Nike, Goff and Rodgers have a QB duel for the ages, both throwing over 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. I'm kind of focusing on, and then, because the secondaries are maybe struggling in the opposing defenses, mainly focusing on, do they have a QB duel? Aaron Rodgers and Jared Goff. It's a good one because I don't really see it go back and forth like, oh, great drive by Rodgers, great drive by Goff, back and forth, anybody's game. I don't really see it like that. But in terms of the stats, I think it'll be it could look like that. So honestly, it's a good one, but I really don't know how to answer it. I think they'll be similar in stats, but I don't think it'll be considered much of a duel because I think Rodgers will be leading the way for the most part in this game, just kind of outplaying. I'm not a big fan of the term garbage time because they're still going out and getting that production, those points, but the way people use that term kind of late in games coming from behind, I think that's kind of where Goff can get his numbers possibly. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, obviously you better get in that production, good play early on. Next one we got from Preston Russell. Sam Darnold continues to shine with 3 touchdowns against the Saints. Is Sam Darnold shining though? I guess it's a question. He had some bright moments, a couple good balls, a real good deep ball to Robbie Anderson, step up in the pocket, let it sling. He had a nice rushing touchdown, understanding when to go there. He did miss some touchdown throws. I definitely wouldn't say he's shining, but he's, it's promising right now, perhaps. I think this is a good one, too. I always pick the ones that it's kind of hard for me to decide here because it's interesting. Is he going to shine and throw 3 touchdowns? This is one I'm actually going to say hot, maybe a little bold to me because it is realistic at the same time, but I'm going to say hot. And that's because I really don't think he's going to shine. I don't think he currently is shining, has some promise, but I don't think he gets 3 touchdowns. I think the Saints defense looks pretty good. But why it's such a tough one here is because, if the Panthers were going to win, and then you told me they won, I missed the game. I always use this. I missed the game somehow. They told me, you're telling me the Panthers won the game and they were pretty productive on offense. I'm telling you it's probably because their collection of receivers were too much for a Saints secondary to handle without Marshawn Lattimore. So that's a possibility that, all those receivers get going. The go-to last week seemed to be kind of check downs, dumping the ball off underneath, and I don't think that's going to work against the Saints. And the reason that was mainly wasn't because of Darnold, maybe could have been, but because Panthers offensive line struggled to let the pressure of the Jets in, and that could be the case again for the Saints. I think they'll get a decent amount of pressure, which will cause kind of the lower chance throws. Well, in terms of getting crazy production and crazy amount of touchdowns, I don't think you have a great opportunity to do that just throwing underneath a lot. So we'll see. It's definitely realistic at the same time. Pat Clevenger, I'm probably pronouncing everyone's names wrong. I apologize. One of those was right. I don't know which one, but one was right. Mahomes outrushes Jackson. Mahomes can run, don't get me wrong. I think that's pretty damn piping there. I think I picked the Chiefs to win. I'm pretty confident with the Chiefs, but I think it's a shootout. I think Lamar runs very well. I think he runs very well in this game. I think the Chiefs' run defense was pretty terrible last week. They did play the Browns, but now going against the Ravens and going against more like it's a different style running game too. That's pretty tough. So I do think Lamar runs pretty well. The reason, you could be right. You could be right here. The reason why he could end up right is because, let's say the Chiefs just go out and score. They just go out and score right away, which is very possible. And then maybe they stop the Panthers. The Chiefs score again. All right, just like that, they're up two score lead. And the Ravens have no choice but to just keep passing because they don't want to run the clock. They got to try to come back, and they got to keep passing, and that could limit Lamar Jackson. Meanwhile, Patrick Mahomes already rushes a couple times. Rushed one in. We've seen him do that plenty of times. Rushed one in for 6. So I guess it's possible. I think it's pretty piping, though. I think Lamar has a good day running. LSM, Deebo Samuel puts up another monster stat line and starts shooting up everyone's receiver ranks. Yeah, I thought this was a good one, too. I like this one because Deebo went off last week. Yes, he played the Lions. So I think people are kind of forgetting that, how big time of a receiver he is kind of going into week 2 off of week 1. They're already kind of forgetting his week 1 performance. Maybe because they were playing the Lions and now the Eagles look pretty good. But what people also forget, Ayuk a little bit. I think if he plays, I think he picks it up this week, and they kind of use him. They maybe save them a little bit for this game. There could be a little bit that we're not hearing about, maybe. But with the Ayuk situation, questionable, and they haven't been thrilled with how he's looked maybe in practice. And then they're pretty thin other than that at receiver. Deebo Samuel is by far their best guy right now, and you can get him the ball in any way. Something else people are forgetting about that he is a damn good receiver. Like, he's really good, a really good football player in general, huge football guy. And people forget that because he's always hurt. Well, here we are. He's 100% healthy in week 2 only. So we expect him to be healthy still. Going against the Eagles, look real good. They got a good pass rush, but that secondary definitely improved, definitely a lot better. But it's a secondary that you can beat. A guy like Deebo Samuel you got to worry about in the backfield, downfield, intermediate routes. I think people kind of forget. Basically, I think people forget that he can definitely do some damage here. Now, how do I put this? Do I say this is happening? I'm going to say it's happening. I guess define monster stat line. He probably doesn't have the insane amount of yards he had last week, but I think he has a receiver one, top tier receiver one stat line. He's a problem maybe for the Eagles. So I think it's going to happen. I like Deebo Samuel. The only thing is he's got to stay healthy. That is the only thing, because if he's healthy, he's ridiculous. He's absolutely ridiculous. Next up, realistic Viking fan. Chandler Jones has 4 sacks on the Vikings. That's a good one, too, because he had a whopping 5 sacks. I mean, ridiculous. Leads the league by 3 sacks with 5 sacks. And that was against Titans' offensive line, who looked really bad, but the Titans' offensive line were used to being pretty good, actually. Now he plays the Vikings' offensive line, which in terms of pass protection you could debate is One of the worst in football. They allowed the most pass rush rate last year, so they were the worst in football in that category last year. So Chandler Jones going for maybe an easier task against the Vikings. So you would think if he gets 5 sacks against the Titans, against the Vikings, 4 sacks, yeah, no problem. I mean, that's ridiculous, though. It is a ridiculous stat line. It's so hard to – I know it wouldn't be duplicating because it's one less. I don't think – I'm going to say piping. I don't think he gets it. If there was a team for him to get even more than 5 sacks with, you'd probably pick out the Vikings somehow. I just don't think he gets it. I'm going to go ahead and say he gets enough pressure, a ton of pressure. I think getting 2 sacks is having a maybe an elite game. I think he has that. I think he gets 2 sacks. I think it's probably going to look like he can get a lot of sacks, a lot of pressure. I think Cousins possibly can get. Cousins getting better, kind of getting the ball out while he's getting drilled. Saw that last week as well. I'm going to say 2 sacks, has a monster game again. I just think it's so hard to repeat that or be in that range. But if he gets, again, 2 sacks couldn't be an elite game. If he gets more than 2 sacks, my God, we can give him the defensive MVP already. Not really, 'cause it's only been 2 weeks, but I mean, it's absolutely absurd. Next up, Riccardo Bonavecchi. I better be saying that right. I'm Italian. Herbert will throw for 400-plus yards against the Cowboys. Yeah, I think he could do it. I think this is possible. I think, this is actually 400's a lot. I'm trying to think. Tom Brady got 370 something, 76, somewhere around there against the Cowboys last week, and he played lights out. Man, that's a tough one. I'm not gonna. I was about to say it's happening. I'm gonna say realistic. I think he's gonna be, because he could end up with a 350, 370. So I'm thinking right around that range. I think it's realistic for him to get 400 yards against the Cowboys defense. Doesn't have DeMarcus Lawrence now. Remember that. Could be without Randy Gregory. Herbert can air it out. They throw the ball a ton. It's definitely realistic. I'm not gonna say it's happening though. Next up, Jackson Rosenthal. Justin Fields will play at least 1 full drive against the Bengals. Ooh, he should. He definitely should. Right away, I was about to go piping because I really don't think it happens. And then they go the Dalton revenge game, maybe we want to call it. And they're just so stubborn with Fields playing him that much. But I'll say hot because it's just 1 drive. What if they want to do 1 drive instead of 1 play or 2 plays? It's very possible. But I still think it's hot because I don't think it happens. I think we definitely see Justin Fields. But I think they roll with Dalton. If this was maybe week 3, week 4, then possibly, it's definitely possible. But yeah, I'm gonna go hot. I'm gonna go hot on that one. Next one, Eric Bunzal. Ravens finally get over the hump and beat the Chiefs. Martindale chills on the blitz and runs more zone. I like that second part. I guess it's a 2-parter. Ravens finally get over the hump and beat the Chiefs. That's pretty hot. I think they're home Sunday nights. Maybe I won't say piping, but I just don't see the Ravens beating them. But I kind of want to focus on the second part and kind of go back into the first part. Martindale chills on the blitz, runs more zone. So, yeah, I've talked about this a lot of times. Everyone knows it as well. The Ravens blitz as much as anyone, a lot of man coverage, and that usually dominates a lot of teams. Why the Ravens usually have one of the best defenses. But it never works against the Chiefs because Patrick Mahomes and company, they are better against man coverage, probably because Mahomes is so talented, has the strong arm, and the receivers have so much speed and they're so good that they just beat man coverage. But Mahomes is just so good against the blitz on top of that. So that's why they never can beat the Chiefs, because their game doesn't work. Now they're almost forced to not play their game, though. That's why I like this one. They're missing Marcus Peters, and they couldn't play their game against the Raiders because of that. They tried. The blitz didn't work. So on top of that, they may not be able to play their game against anyone, which means blitz and more man coverage. They know that it doesn't work against the Chiefs, so they might just come out there with different looks. Now, they're not used to running that, so that's why I still don't really trust them, even if they do, but that would be their best shot to win, is just run a ton of different zone coverage, maybe some trap coverage, make them think you're playing man, and then just roll with, the cover 3 in the past seem to be, mix it up. I look what the Steelers ran against the Bills last week against Josh Allen, a similar style quarterback, Mahomes. You throw cover 2 out there, everything. Cover 3, cover 4. What are they in? You're scrambling. You're trying to figure out what they're in. That's why most NFL teams do run zone coverage. So I like that second part. I think that second part is pretty realistic. I'm actually not going to say it's happening. You would think he's learned his lesson against the Chiefs and then how the team looks right now, but I'd say not so fast. He might insist on the blitz in man coverage, but I'm going to say realistic on that part. And if they do that, that'd be their best chance to win, kind of going in the first part there. So we will see. It's definitely an interesting topic, something to look forward to what they do there. Next, Cameron Sullivan. There are no upsets this week. Every favorite team wins. And I like this one, too, because I'm running through my picks earlier this week kind of in my head before I actually pick. And I'm like, I'm picking every single favorite. And I don't like that. But I'm like, which one do I switch? I ended up taking the Titans, who were the underdogs. That's kind of my bold pick of the week. I ended up going with that. It was kind of a feeling. I explained it more in the other video score predictions. And I'm not overly confident on that, to be honest, which tends to happen if you're going for like an upset. It shouldn't be that much of an upset, though. It's the Titans. We expect them to be a lot better. But, yeah, I actually think this is it's a good one, though. It's a tough one because there has to be, it's when somebody does like a parlay and a bet. Like, it all looks good. Like, okay, yeah, all those are going to be right? There always ends up being surprise in there and why everybody loses that every single time pretty much, or most of the time. So I don't even know what to put for this one. I'm gonna say warm. It looks. If you look at the games, this is the week that all the favorites should be able to win. I'm actually gonna change. I'm gonna say hot because it's just not gonna happen. As much as it looks like it, because there are some favorites just based off last week. Would the Seahawks probably still would be a favorite over the Titans if the Titans were good last week? Cardinals versus Vikings, that'd probably be different based off the outcome last week. There's a lot of games like that, and I think there's too much basing off week one. And it's bound that a team that looked great in week one will look bad this week, and a team that looked bad last week will look good this week. Therefore, upsets will happen, probably multiple. So it looks like every favorite will win, but it's really just not going to happen, But this is the ultimate week where it really looks like it. Last week, I was like definitely thinking underdogs were going to win, So this week was different, but it's still early. Random things happen. Therefore, upsets will happen. Next one, Mason Asceta, the Goat House and crew get proven wrong for the second straight week. Fins up. Yeah, we all of us surprisingly picked the Patriots last week. I picked the Patriots because I thought they were going to win, but I was kind of surprised that everybody, all of us picked the Patriots last week. Dolphins ended up winning. And this week, Bills-Dolphins, I planned on picking the Bills bounce-back game, but I was expecting at least one person to pick the Dolphins. Didn't happen, so that could go for the back-to-back. It is interesting because I'm confident about the Bills, but I didn't really think about it. Did the Steelers expose the Bills? There was some games last year where Josh Allen didn't play his game. It's a lot of similarities, a lot of mixture of zone coverage, a lot of trap coverages, make you think it's man coverage, but it's really zone. Could in a good Dolphins defense that could really throw them up by switching it up. Could teams have the keys here? It's a possibility. Dolphins defense is really good. They can win on the takeaways. Their offense needs to get going. They're playing a tough Bills defense. So there's reasons I picked the Bills, but I think this is realistic. I think it's definitely possible. Playing in Miami and week 2, it's hot. I've heard that I've never been there, but I've definitely heard, and I've seen it actually, that the away sideline is just covered in the sun while there's usually a shadow for most of the game on the other side, on the Dolphins sideline. So that's pretty interesting as well. Great strategy. And so could that affect the Buffalo Bills, who dominant, where were they most dominant? They were dominant in general last year. Where were they most dominant? They were dominant in the freezing cold last year. So, hey, maybe that's what it is. So we'll see. I'm excited about this week. A lot of storylines, a lot of them brought up in this video, like what to watch for. Could this happen? I love seeing those things. So, it's going to wrap this one up. If you want to play along, go to our Twitter, at GoDows NFL, link down below. Any link that you're looking for down there as well. Other videos up for week 2, covering week 2 like we do every single week. So like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.